equipment and just thinking creatively about different ways to stay fit and healthy. We'll also talk a little bit about nutrition as well towards the end and how we can use that to our advantage. So thank you. What just happened there? Sorry about that, everybody. Hold on a second. There we go. That was tricky. Okay. There we go. So I have respect for whatever your reason you're here, whether it's, so you want to eat more and enjoy a good beer and pizza, because I do. I'll tell you that. I like to exercise for that reason. Or it's that you really, truly love to compete and be an athlete. Okay, I love my little emoji here too. It's pretty good. I match it tonight. But whatever your reason for being here is tonight, I want you to celebrate it and have fun with it. Hopefully, since we're all athletes in mind, we have that mindset together, but at the same time, I understand everybody has different motivations and reasons for doing things. And that's all part of the discussion of figuring out what strength training program is best for you. So what's on our radar tonight? I love my nor'easter puns, so you'll have to forgive me. Okay. But we're going to discuss a little bit about, quick review of anatomy with athletes. We'll talk about the benefits of strength training. We'll talk about overcoming some of the barriers to strength training and what they may be. And then we'll talk about some quick movement assessments that you can do at home. And I'm guessing that this group right here is probably pretty well versed in movement and fitness and all those sorts of things, because you found a way to stay active and competitive. But that said, there's always more to learn with it. So hopefully you can take some gems away that are going to help you continue to stay active and competing. And then we'll talk at the end about designing a strength program. So what goes into it and how you can kind of build your own and plug and play with that. So in terms of an athlete here, right, there are lots of things we want to consider when we think about our programming, okay, and when we put together something for ourselves. I know for me, sometimes when, you're just feeling you want to get a workout in and you want to be quick about it and get something done, it's pretty easy to just pick a couple things that you've always done, if you know what I mean, and get right through it. And they're old standbys and you move on. Sometimes that's good for the soul. It's kind of food for the soul. It just kind of makes you feel good to do things you've always done. Like, for example, I played college basketball here at UNE. I love to go out to that court and get a couple shots up. It just makes me feel better, right? Same thing might be true with some particular exercises that you like to do, or maybe it's biking or running or whatever your outlet may be. But it's important to understand that there are other exercises that we need to add in to make sure that we're a balanced athlete. So that's what this graphic is about. First and foremost, you have to understand that our core is not just our abdominal muscles. It really is everything from, I always say, from the chin to the knees, okay? It's everything that is 360 degrees in that area. So I consider your shoulders part of your core. I consider your hips part of your core. Obviously your spine and supporting your spine is extremely important. But everything from stabilizing those areas to how we breathe and the mechanics of breathing and how we transfer energy from our feet through our torso and out our hands and vice versa. Has to do with how our core works. So in my book, everything is core. So when my athletes say, can I have more core exercises, please? I say, everything you're doing is core. They don't always love that answer, but it is factual because our core is just related to just about everything that we do and has to be in charge of it. Our shoulder girdle, obviously, really important. I know that many of you may have, some injuries that you've accumulated over the years or nagging things that kind of make it tough for you to do the things you love to do. Know that I really enjoy modifying and progressing and regressing exercises. It's one of my favorite things to do with my athletes. So, if you have questions about that specifically at the end, I'd be more than happy to answer, exercises, give you ideas of exercises that you could do to replace things that don't make it hurt. I'm a firm believer we can always find a way to attack and make you stronger, attack certain things without making it hurt. But our shoulder is really important for reciprocal motion in all 360 degrees, or we hope. Our upper body helps create energy as we move. Our knees and our hips help, quadriceps specifically, the tops of our legs help push us forward. Our hamstrings help pull us along the ground. Our glutes and our butt extend our hips, and our knee flexors certainly help with our knee drive and getting our knee up and out. So regardless of what your sport is, and by the way, if you could drop in the chat box what sport you play, I'd love to hear that so I can help tailor this conversation to you. And lastly, your gastrocnemius and your soleus, which are your calf complex, help propel you along the ground, whether that's just walking or planting and cutting, jumping and landing, whatever you're doing. So all of these things have to be taken into account when we work as an athlete in the weight room or on our home gym, whatever that ends up being. So I'm going to take a peek. Maybe Deb, could you look at the chat for me and then give me an idea of kind of who we have here for a demographic as we go? You can just interrupt me when you have them all. So one of the things I like to do with my athletes, first and foremost, is teach you how to stack up. Okay, so this is the first part of this interactive. Unless you're driving, please don't stand up. But if you're at home and in a safe place and you can, I'd love for you to stand up, and I want to talk you through what we call stacking up. Okay, so if you're looking at this graphic here, what I'm hoping to do is help centrate your shoulders and your hips. And a lot of times when we're not in good alignment, A, it causes chronic pain and we don't even know it. And B, we can't even begin to possibly try to strength train effectively if we're not in this position to start and finish our lifts. Okay, so if you'll join me, stand on up, okay? Back, so hopefully you can see me a little bit better here, right? And I know you can't see my head right now, but that's okay. Adjust here. So first things first, okay? If you're looking at me from the side, okay, what I want to see, hopefully, see this dowel right here, this broomstick. It's one of my favorite tools that you have in a home gym, by the way, okay? I want to make sure that this dowel looks as straight as my body. So I want to have my ankles directly under my knees soft. I don't want them bent, but I don't want them locked. And a lot of times folks stand with their knees locked as a compensatory pattern to kind of protect their hips and lower back. So if we learn to stand with soft bend in our knees, it actually helps us access our hips in a more efficient manner. So soft bend in knees, then moving up to our hips, what we want to think about is tucking our tailbone under. So we don't want to be with our butt behind us here and kind of arching, big arch right here. I want to straighten that out by tucking my tailbone under. And then I want to think about my ribs next. So I want my ribs to think about being knitted in. So if I took a knitting needle or a threaded needle and I knit my ribs together and I pulled them tight, okay, I would want them to come down and in. So that's what I'm hoping for. That would mean that I have great control of my core overall. Okay, so I'm tucking that tailbone and I'm knitting those ribs. Moving up to the shoulders, I'm going to think about looping my shoulders down and back. Okay. What I don't want to do is squeeze them back tight. A lot of times physical therapists and other fitness friends, you may have heard them say, squeeze your shoulders. But that cue often leads to people doing this and kind of sticking their chest out rather than getting their shoulders where they need to be. So you want to think about looping those shoulders down and back and having a long neck. And what I mean by that is that I don't want your shoulders near your ears. So I want a nice long neck, shoulders looped down and back. And lastly, okay, this head of ours gets out in front of us because everything interesting in our life is out here, but we need to learn to keep our head over our shoulders, okay? So what we want to think about, instead of being here, which would be forward head posture, happens often while we drive, while we read, while we're on our phones or computers. We want to think about that chin being back and in, and my ears being directly in line with my shoulder, okay? So there we go. That is being stacked up. All right. Now, some of you might feel a sensation of like, I might fall over here if your weight is in your heels and you're doing it appropriately. Okay. That is a normal sensation. I just want you to know that. But the more that you work on that, and the great place to do it is the wall behind you. Can you get your head, your shoulders, and your tailbone? You don't have to do it right this second, but it's a good little check-in. Okay. Can you get yourself fully stacked up and use all of your muscles and joints the right way? All right. So you can rest now, but great job. Thanks for doing that with me. Okay.
Lindy, want me to give you a list of who's here?
Yes, please.
We've got a bunch of basketball players, swimming, cycling,
Ooh.
pickleball, archer, used to run, now power walk, and some more bikers all responded.
Ooh, that's a great group. All of those sports rely heavily on our hamstrings and our posterior chain, so our glutes and our lower back. So all of this stuff's going to be right up everybody's alley. That's great. But I hope that kind of just helps you think a little bit. We don't have to think about how we stand. It's automatic, it's autopilot, right? We just do things. I'll pose this rhetorical question to you. Think about, do you shift your hips left or right when you stand? Okay. Like if you're waiting at the line at the door, do you tend to shift into one hip? Okay. Think about that. You want to think about having equal weight on both feet at all times if you can. And it's healthy to shift left to right. However, we don't want to get into a situation where we kind of hang out on one side all the time because that's going to make our joints cranky too. So when we get to talking about strength training later, just know that this is the start and the finish position for almost every exercise, especially the ones that involve our lower body. We always want to start in this position, do the movement, and return to this position, okay? All right. And then we have 3 planes of motion here, okay? Again, a little bit of an anatomy review, but if I was to take this dowel and split it, my head into 2 right and left halves here, okay, that would be what we call that would be running, that would be cycling, that would be anything that happens kind of left to right. And that's what most human movement occurs in for the most part. The frontal plane, however, is if I split myself into front and back, okay? And that is a little bit trickier. The frontal plane doesn't happen much unless you think basketball playing defense, getting those hands up, kind of out to the side. That's definitely the frontal plane. A jumping jack, for example, is frontal plane, but happens less rarely than the sagittal plane. And then transverse is with rotation, okay? So that would be those 2 things. With transverse, that archer, that is definitely you with that rotation, okay? A swimmer, absolutely. Basketball for sure. Cycling and running, it's not that you necessarily rotate, but you need to learn to control rotation while you run to make yourself more efficient. So I just wanted to review those pieces for you. So this is me on my soapbox, if you're ready for this here, okay, ready? I really want to focus always with my athletes on having quality movement, okay, with strength. And that's going to give me healthy, high-performing athletes, okay? And my time with Maine Senior Women's Basketball, I know they are high-performing athletes with lofty goals, and I'm sure the rest of you are as well, okay? But in order to do that, we need to move with high quality and then add strength to that. If you own a movement pattern, okay, and you then gain the strength to support it, you're definitely going to play and run or cycle, archery, I mean, anything, swim, you're going to do it efficiently and safely, which is the key, okay? And then we want to try, keyword on the emphasis try there, not to layer dysfunction on top of poor movement mechanics. It just becomes like that self-fulfilling prophecy, like a bad cycle. So what I mean by that is if you already don't have great mechanics, either because of an old injury or just maybe haven't learned the pieces and parts to it yet, if we keep adding strength to it with poor form, it's gonna bite us sometime, and we don't want that to happen. So that's why I focus so heavily on having great movement quality before we add weight to anything. So that said, tonight we will discuss a little bit later on how to use a milk jug, a laundry detergent, or something like that as a weight at home, and this dowel. But I wouldn't care if it was just your body weight and you really focus on the form and technique of it, because no matter what, it's going to help. Okay. The mind-body connection is strong, that's for sure. And then we want to think about, if we can, incorporating some assessment. So the stacking up that I just taught you, that's an assessment. That's a quick little test you can run on yourself daily to figure out, all right, where am I at? Am I able to kind of get in that position today? And I will tell you this, I mean, stress is such another level these days with COVID and everything that's going on in the world. You know, from politics to everything. And I think it definitely affects us all somatically in terms of our body as well as it does mentally. But some of these movement assessments that I'll show you tonight are a great way for you to tell if your body is stressed. And sometimes if you're in a high level of stress, exercise can be helpful, but sometimes it can be like not the thing to do tonight. So if you can't stack up and you find that you're like really hunched over and kind of in this position here, that might be just a good signal that, you know what, some self-care is needed tonight. And so hopefully they'll give you a little bit more insight into your body and how it moves. So I'm gonna step off my soapbox now, okay? But in terms of leveraging the weight room, overall strength training is an excellent way to improve almost every facet of your performance, okay? And just the things that you love to do, your daily living. They're so important to prevent your overuse and repetitive stress type injuries. They're related to running or playing sport, cycling or anything like that. They definitely help you improve your energy use and your neuromuscular efficiency, which definitely for senior athletes, that's very important. That hand-eye coordination, that timing, power output is not just for my college athletes. And what I mean by power output is being able to move quickly and efficiently. So, Deb can attest to this, and any of the women who've worked with me before, but I've taught them all how to do hang cleans and Olympic lifts using a dowel, and then progress to barbells when appropriate. I think that there's definitely a place for all of us to work on being explosive and those sorts of things in safe ways that are going to benefit our body and our brain, the mind-body connection. We obviously know that strength training is really important for bone density, which I'm sure everybody knows, but I always like to remind us of that. It's just so, so important. It's called Wolf's Law. This is a fun one. So the whole idea behind it is that as a muscle moves through its range of motion, the tendon that's attached to the muscle, tendon attaches muscle to bone, that muscle pulls that tendon pulls on bone. And when that happens, new little bone cells called osteoblasts are created. And that's how we form bone. So by strength training, you are literally exerting force, pulling on the tendon, pulling on the bone, and creating bone constantly. I mean, it happens, you know, as we go throughout our day as well, and exert forces on things, and we exert, you know, things get forced on us too. We have to react to things, and all of those things help that situation, but nothing helps it more than strength training. And we know that via the research, okay? It's obviously helpful for cardiovascular fitness too. I know we have some runners and cyclers on here and swimming, but strength training can be a really beneficial way to help blood pressure, you know, mitigation. It can also just help with stroke reduction and cardiovascular health and lots of other things like that. And obviously it just can help with mental health. It's really, there's a lot of research linked to depression and anxiety and exercise, and how therapeutic exercise can be for those things. Obviously, it can increase your overall muscular endurance and fitness. I think we understand that thought process, but it can clear up, when done well, it can clear up nagging injuries. And I think a lot of folks avoid it, thinking that it will exacerbate their problems. But with the right coach and the right program, it certainly can help clear up a lot of things and make you feel a whole lot better. So some of those barriers to lifting, okay, we want to try to lift those barriers if we can, and debunk some of the common misconceptions about it. You know, running or walking, I hear this often, especially from senior athletes. Running or walking is enough of a workout for my legs. I don't need to strength train my legs. That's true. It is a workout to run or walk, absolutely. But our legs need to do more than just that, and they need to go through different ranges of motion. We'll discuss in a little bit how important it is to squat and to hinge at the hips, and how important that is to do on both legs and on one leg. So we certainly want to do more than just run or walk if we can. And if for nothing else, then for new bone creation, Wolf's Law, because our biggest bones are the bones in our legs. So that's kind of our pot of gold, if you will. Okay. Again, I already have an injury. I don't need to add to that problem. And I think a lot of folks, it's a fearful thing. And just so everybody knows, I mean, Deb knows my history pretty well with knee injuries, but I've had 7 knee surgeries now. And I've had 2 that were almost a total knee replacement. They used my own cells to regrow my cartilage, implanted them. I was locked in a knee brace for close to 6 months. So I've been around the ringer when it comes to injuries, and I understand the fear and apprehension that come with them, as well as how to help athletes overcome that and work to improve those things. But we certainly can clear them up with good use of strength training. This one's a big one. I don't have enough time to get to the gym. I feel that these days, even though I work in one, which is crazy. But going home and exercising sometimes is like the last thing on my mind, because I taught people how to do it all day. But that said, it's important to make time for you. And then access to the gym right now is a real challenge. I'm sure that you all feel that, you know, not being able to go do things that you necessarily like to do, or you had a routine doing before. Some of the places that maybe you had access to prior are not open because of COVID or have different restrictions. So that's why when Deb approached me about doing this, about having exercises at home that we could work on, I thought it was just a great idea. And I will provide you, I don't know how many people are on social media, but if you are, my Instagram is chock full of examples of how to do things at home, way beyond what I'm going to discuss tonight, because I can only fit so much in a time frame. But if you'd like to explore that, I'll give you the information for it a little bit later. And then this is another big one. I just don't know. I don't know what exercises I should be doing, right? And sometimes that's enough to just kind of deter people. So hopefully tonight you'll leave with some ideas of things that you know you can do for certain, sure and certain, that will help you, okay? So we want to get rid of those if we can. But we want to think about, I love this little quote here, doing simple things savagely well, just doing them incredibly well. It does not have to be fancy. It does not have to be overt or extra in any sort of way. It really can just be the simplest of things that are going to make the biggest domino effect in the most positive direction, okay? It just takes the right tools and the right mindset. So if you can dedicate 30 to 45 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week, even twice is exceptional. That's great. 3 times, if you really love it, is awesome, okay? That will make a huge difference and go a very long way. The most current research says that we really only do need that amount of time. Some folks like to spend more time doing that, but then at the end of the day, it's really not giving us the best return on our investment, if that makes sense, and our time and energy. So 30 to 45 minutes seems to be the sweet spot for getting gains from strength training. Try to see everyday objects around you as equipment, right? Again, so we don't have to go buy a whole bunch of equipment, which is scarce to find anyway these days, because everybody's trying to do it. But you have everything you need right at home to do, to be active and to strength train. It just takes a little bit of repurposing. You want to try to train your whole body every time you lift, if you can, rather than just segments. So another thing I hear constantly is, well, it's leg day, so I'm going to only focus on my legs. Or today's a chest and back day, or tris and bis. I mean, I can hear all kinds of different examples of splits within the body. That notion does work if you're trying to bodybuild or build specific muscle groups. But that said, the body does not work in isolation. That's not how it works. Our muscles are integrative and our system is synchronous. It needs to work together to be successful, especially as we age, and especially if we're competitive athletes. So it's important to make sure that we're not segmentally compartmentalizing the body. We're thinking about the whole kinetic chain, how the body works. The old song, the knee bone's connected to the thigh bone. That's 100% true. And that's how we should strength train. Okay, I won't start singing to you, I promise. Nobody wants to hear that. Even my 13-month-old looks at me like I'm crazy when I do that. But we want to attack what we need, not what we want, okay, from our training. And again, sometimes, like I said, the things that feed your soul, that you like to do, that you know make you feel good, we got to sprinkle them in. They have to be there, okay? But just like any practice, when we walk in and coach says, we're working on X, Y, or Z today, and you're inside, you're like, oh boy, it's going to be a day. But we know that we need it as athletes. There are certain things that we have to do to improve our performance. So using the assessments we'll talk about here in a minute will help you understand what may be our needs and what may be our wants in your strength programming and what to prioritize and attack first. And I always like to do the things that are needs earlier in the week when I'm freshest mentally, rather than later towards the end of the week when I don't have as much self-control, because I know Friday night rolls around and I'm like, all right, this couch looks awful good tonight, okay? So we want to get those things done early. And then being consistent. I cannot overstate this enough. Being consistent with your program is the number one mistake that most people make as they start a strength program. We see this time of year anyway with the New Year's resolutions, and I'm going to get after it, which is a great mindset. However, we tend to fall off around 3 to 4 weeks, maybe 5. And then if we don't see results with what we're looking for, we tend to just kind of, all right, we'll move on to the next thing. But what happens is folks don't often give things enough time. And our body takes about, this is probably not the most encouraging news, but roll with me. It takes about 6 weeks to really adapt to what you're doing. So if you change what you're doing prior to that, you're not going to get the most benefit out of it. You have to be patient with it and allow your body to get some time with it, and also be consistent. If you do 1 day a week, 1 week, and then you don't do something, and then you try to go to 3 days, you're probably going to end up pretty sore. And that's not the gain of any exercise program. You don't really, soreness is expected, general soreness here and there, but you certainly don't want to be so sore that you don't want to go back to it. So being consistent prevents that and helps you incrementally increase what you're doing and progressively get better. And then again, I can't underestimate simplicity. Okay. Simple is always going to win the day. All right. The simple play always wins. I've seen it at play many times. So in terms of assessments, you are welcome to try these, or you're welcome to just listen to them. It's up to you. Okay. But these are 3 quick assessments that I have always found to be handy. Okay. The first one, this one right here that my mouse is circling, this is called a standing knee tuck, and it's about single leg stability. Okay. So if your balance is challenged, you may want to have your hand near a wall. But if you feel comfortable with it, you could always do it out in open space too. But I'm going to back up slightly here so you can maybe see my legs a bit. But what you're going to do is put your hands on your hips, and then you're going to try to stabilize and come up to this knee bent position, which right here, by the way, this is our running stance, right? That's our knee drive for running. So there's one correlation for you. When you're riding a bike, that's your downstroke to come back up, right? So there's a cycling thing for you. If you're playing a sport that involves running, pickleball, basketball, that's going to definitely happen. So you want to think about keeping your knee pulled towards your shin and driving that knee up and putting that foot back down. And if you can complete that without loss of balance, well, then great. We have some pretty good stability going on there. Okay. If that's a real challenge for you, then you might know that you need to add in some more balance work, which again, balance is critical as we age. Okay. It's one of the first things that we tend to lose. And I think most of you folks are most definitely ahead of the curve. Okay. So you're still doing things that help this tremendously. But balance is always going to be very, very important. Okay. So that's the number one that I want you to try. The next one is called seated spinal flexion and extension. Okay. Now I'm not a huge fan of spinal flexion or extension. And anyway, I like our spine to be straight. Okay. But that said, it is meant to move in certain ways. Okay. And mostly through our upper back, our thoracic spine. So a quick way to remember this, your cervical spine and your neck has 7 pieces to it, 7 vertebrae. Okay, you have breakfast at 7. You have lunch at 12. Our thoracic spine has 12 segments, and you have dinner at 5. Okay, your lumbar spine has 5. So our cervical spine, obviously, that is how we interact with the world. That's how our head is turning, eyes are following. It's how we read and react when we play, etc. And see things and adjust our course, as we need. Our thoracic spine, which this one particularly looks at, is how we breathe. It's what expands our rib cage and brings it back in. And breathing is such a critical component to what we do, especially now with COVID. So if you know this about yourself, maybe you do, maybe you don't. If you tend to breathe in and out through your mouth almost all the time, try to practice breathing in and through your nose only, nasal breathing. Okay. Unless you're exerting yourself, then obviously that's going to change your breathing patterns. But when you breathe in through our nose only, our nose is designed to do that. It helps heat and moisturize our air, helps fight and take out pathogens. It helps get our core fired up and ready to exercise, and helps protect our spine, which is interesting. It helps kind of create a balloon of pressure that protects it. But if we breathe in and out through our mouth, we lose all those good things. But what you'd want to do is be seated. Okay, you'd put your hands behind your head if that's in your wheelhouse with your shoulders. If not, you could cross your arms across your chest this direction. And then you would want to see if you could get your elbows to your knees, or how close you could. If that's not going to happen, totally fine. Don't force through a range of motion. Okay, but it's interesting to know, can I get there or can I not? And then can you extend up as well? Okay, so it's not just the flexion, but can you then extend back out of that? We know that our spine needs to articulate and move to do what we need to do. Okay, we don't want it to be so rigid that it doesn't move. We just want to make sure that the parts that should move, and the parts that should be stable are stable. Okay. And then the last one, these are called wall slides. You would put your back up to a wall, okay, and you would put your elbows right here in a W shape. Backs of the hands, the goal is backs of the hands on the wall, head on the wall. And then can you slide those hands all the way up and all down, okay, without losing contact with the wall? Now, I'll tell you what, that one's the hardest one for me. I tend to arch and my head comes off, and it's a real challenge for me. So that's one I'm always battling with. But that will give us a good look at your spine, give you a good look at your single leg stability and your hip stability, and then your shoulders and all that good stuff. So those are the things that I worry about most as a strength coach: our hips, okay, our shoulders, and our spine. If those 3 things are healthy, our ankles and knees are going to follow along, our hands and wrists and elbows for the most part. But those are the things that are attached to the core. And remember when I said in the very beginning that I consider core chin to knees. Okay. So those are great things to practice. But in terms of moving towards designing our program here, okay, we really want to make sure that we are doing things that can help us better withstand ground reaction forces. And what I mean by that is our foot interacting with the ground, right? If you're playing pickleball, that is aggressive. You got to get side to side, and you got to be able to make those plays, right? Basketball, same way. In basketball, you're dealing with someone else, right, knocking into you defensively and offensively, and maintaining control of that. If you're racing, biking, or swimming, those are more relative in nature, meaning you're moving your own body weight through time and space or through the water. But that said, you're still creating ground reaction when you push off the wall, when you swim, okay, when you strike down, when you pedal, or when that foot hits the ground when you're running, okay? And those are all opportunities for what we call energy leaks, where we kind of lose our energy, or we're not doing things really efficiently. But if we can button those up and make that ground reaction strong, then we're going to be more efficient and stay healthier and safer as we go through our sport, okay? So moving mindfully through the phases of movement is really important. So for example, We call this concentric, eccentric, and isometric. So these 3 types of phases of muscle action. I'll use my bicep as an example, okay? If I were to do a bicep curl, so I started at my side and I curled up, okay? That act of making the muscle, okay, is called concentric. So I'm shortening the muscle belly, okay? Once I'm here and I'm holding, if I was gonna flex, right, that's isometric, meaning it's staying the same, right? It's not changing its length. Isometrics are really important, by the way, okay, for gaining stability. And then if I were to lower slowly back down, that lengthening action, I can actually feel my muscle release. So if you want to try this with me, go ahead. We make that muscle, you feel that muscle get shorter and tighter. You isometrically contract, you feel that little shake while you try to do that. And then you lower and lengthen that arm out. You're going to feel that muscle literally lengthen underneath your fingers. So using those 3 phases of motion is really important to continue to gain strength. So even if you don't have extra weight to add to exercises, just by manipulating that and, for example, sitting slowly into a chair, tapping your butt, and then standing tall and quickly getting out of it, that's playing with those 3 ranges of motion for our quadriceps and for our glutes, okay? But if we train that and we train in all 3 ranges of motion, meaning that everything that you just saw gets trained, then we're gonna stay healthy as well. If we ignore the backside of our body, we're really gonna be in for it. And I really focus a lot on your upper back, which we'll discuss in a bit, and I'll tell you why. And then at the very end of it, if you fuel all of that for your energy expenditure, we're gonna be cooking with gas. It's gonna be a good thing, okay? So we wanna make sure that we include a warm-up. That's important. I know most folks in our busy lives, we tend to just go, 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 but the warm-up's a great opportunity for you to address your soft tissue quality, which is kind of those assessments, understanding, am I stiff or tight? What can I do to kind of help mobilize my skeleton, okay? It's a great opportunity to get your temperature elevated in a good way. Better not be in a bad way these days. And then activate our neuromuscular system. So I follow a little acronym called RAMP, which means I increase my heart rate, I activate my muscles, okay? I mobilize them through their ranges of motion, and then I potentiate or get them excitable and use them, okay? But that little system right there, and I put that in the warm-up or the workout we're gonna discuss, is a great way to get your body ready to safely exercise. With your strength training, you wanna make sure you include those major muscle groups, that whole kinetic chain. You're addressing the core for sure, okay? And you wanna make sure that there's muscular balance, okay? And of course, we all have goals, you know, for whatever reason, like I mentioned, that we're chasing the pizza or we're there to be competitive, whatever it is. We all have goals for our programming, but depending on the goal, you might change these numbers a little bit, but we want to make sure that in general, we're doing 3 sets or 3 cycles through of about 6 to 8 repetitions of each thing, okay? And picking about 6 to 8 exercises that you can partner together is a great way to go to make sure that you address all of the, you know, major muscle patterns and movements in your body. And then if you can and you have time, it's always great to incorporate a cool down, okay? So I'm sure that most of you probably work on some flexibility of some sort. It might have a good routine that you like, maybe yoga. Yoga is an excellent cool down, even 5 minutes of it. And we can all just savasana and just lay there. It's great. It's my favorite. It's my husband's favorite anyway. I make him do yoga, but he's never happy with me. He just likes to lay down at the end. And then it's a great time to also include mental rehearsal of visualization. So to think through what you did for your program and just have some me time and really think about what you did and let it absorb into your being, okay? So we'll design yourself strong here with that, all right? We'll hopefully identify what equipment you have at home. Now, if you maybe some people have dumbbells, maybe some people have a kettlebell or a yoga ball or a stability ball or an exercise mat or some mini bands. Those are common things that most folks have at home. But again, if you don't have that, no big deal. What can you repurpose to do those things, okay? And once you identify what you have for equipment, then you can start kind of writing your programming, okay? Again, you want to pick about 3 to 5 exercises for your warm-up in that little cycle that I explained with RAMP, heart rate, activate, mobilize, and then potentiate and use it, okay? And then you want to build your program, like I mentioned, to reflect muscular balance. So we want to partner an upper body exercise and a lower body exercise, but not just that simple either. We want to make sure we're including an upper body pull, which would be a rowing variation, or any time that I'm pulling towards myself, okay? Getting my elbows to go that direction, that's a pull, okay? Or it could be any time that I'm pulling my elbows down towards the earth, okay? with a lower body push, which would be any sort of squat variation, any sort of lowering your hips towards the center of the earth and back up and pushing the ground away, okay? Conversely, the next time through, you'd want to do something that's an upper body push, or me extending my elbows and pushing something away from me, or pushing something away from me.
Lyndie, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. I don't know how that happened. I didn't even touch my computer.
It's okay, you muted yourself.
No,
That's
it
so
was,
strange.
no, Lindy, it was me.
Oh,
Sorry.
phew. I was like, I have a ghost.
Sorry.
That's okay. So how far back did you hear, folks? Did anybody hear about the upper body pull and lower body push?
Yeah, that's where you were.
Okay, great. So upper body push. So if I'm pushing myself, something away from me this direction, or pushing something overhead that direction, okay, that's a push. And a lower body pull is a hip hinge, which means that I'll demonstrate these in a little bit, that I'm keeping my hips higher and back, soft bend in my knees, and I'm using my hamstrings and my glutes instead of my quadriceps, predominantly, okay? But doing that is going to make sure I have good balance. I'm not overworking one particular muscle group. That's a major mistake I see most folks make when they go to exercise, that they tend to do most things that I call mirror muscles, exercises for mirror muscles. Those are the things you see when you look in the mirror, okay? The biceps, the triceps, the abdominals, the quadriceps. Again, we're creatures. We know, everybody checks and see what's going on in the mirror, right? Okay. We want to make sure that we look good too. But I tell you what, if you look good going, then that's better. Okay. We want to make sure that our backside is the strongest part of our body, which is a challenge because again, our life is in front of us. So we're more dominant out here than we are back there. But that's why we need to focus even more on the things that we cannot see. Okay. And then lastly, with our core, we want to incorporate anti-flexion extension and anti-rotation drills. Okay. There are drills that are good for rotation or flexion and extension. However, again, it's a return on investment. And with this demographic specifically, these are things that I've focused on with Main Senior Women's Basketball to good impact and effect that have helped us. Okay. So anti-flexion and extension would be things that ensure that my spine isn't doing crunches. So I'm not just doing kind of that motion, or that I'm not doing this motion left to right. Okay. So I'm learning to keep my spine upright and stable without having forward or backward flexion or extension or lateral flexion or extension. Okay. Again, we do have to move through those ranges, but weighting them isn't always a great idea. Okay. For spinal health. Now, anti-rotation, that's not rotating. Okay. So that's finding a way to not allow that rotation to happen. And I'll explain how that correlates to our upper body and lower body work. It could be a single leg squat. It could be a single arm row or a single arm press. Those are all anti-rotational in nature. So again, it doesn't have to be quote unquote core work. Okay. It can be something that's, totally encompassing with our programming. Let me go to the next one here for you folks. Okay. So these are, you could take a picture of this if you want. Again, I will make sure that Deb has this and Joe has this and they can send it out to you if you'd like. But these are my top 6 at-home exercises. Okay, these are and you could build off these in a million ways. Again, if you want to follow me on Instagram and play with that, I've got all kinds of posts up there for when my athletes went home last March and I had to pivot real quick and figure out how I was going to keep them improving and getting stronger at home. Okay, so that's all there for you. But upper body exercise in terms of rows, okay, any type of row, which generally, and again, I'm going to explain these a little bit more thoroughly here in a moment. Okay. But that's anytime I'm pulling those elbows to the sky, right? Or pulling my elbows back behind me. Okay. Or pulling my chin up variations, those types of things, or we call those pull downs. Okay. But those help our shoulder and core stability and our upper back strength. Anti-rotationally, we talked about that, right? That could be a core that's a row that's single arm in nature. So maybe I'm holding something that's only one arm and I'm trying to not rotate while I do it. Okay. The 2 that I have on here are called bird dogs and dead bugs. Now, if you're a yogi and you like to do yoga, okay, you may have seen something like this before where I'm all on all fours and I extend my arm and my leg. Okay. Those are called bird dogs, right? But those are a great drill to work on not rotating my pelvis or my shoulders and keeping stability working left to right. The next one, silly name, but they're called dead bugs, okay? You would be on your back, knees up, hands to the sky, lower back's touching the ground, and that's very important, okay? But then we're looking like the opposite variation of that bird dog. So I'm extending my opposite arm and leg, and again, I'm working on controlling that rotation left to right, okay? So that's two of my very favorite core exercises, okay? Now I know that kneeling can be a tough thing for most folks, depending on knees and those sorts of things, as well as getting on and off the ground sometimes. But if you can safely practice it, getting on and off the ground safely and effectively is a life skill that's extremely important. So it's really important to include in your exercise programming, okay? Lower body presses like goblet squats, that's a squat. So you would hold something right here like a goblet, not our favorite goblet of wine per se, but that would work, I guess. Take a sip at the top, okay? But you would hold something right here, okay? We call this the goblet position, and then you would squat down and back up, okay? There are lots of different variations of goblet squats, and you can't go wrong with them, okay? They're pretty safe, and they're really effective for us. In terms of locomotion, this is a new one as well. These are also called the 6 pillars of movement, okay? Locomotion means walking, right? That's an important thing for all athletes. We have to do that. But I like to partner it with a farmer carry. So if you have a bucket at home, great, okay? If you have a milk jug or a laundry detergent, anything like that, I have a kettlebell right here, okay? You would just go for a walk, okay? Now it looks pretty simple. If you've ever tried these, you'll know that they're not, okay? Because what we're hoping for is that you're keeping your shoulders and your hips steady and stable, and you're not allowing that flexion, extension, forward or backward of that spine. You're keeping that stack that I taught you in the very beginning true while you walk, okay? Really important for single leg balance, stability. And this time of year with ice, right? That like slip, okay? They're important to help with footing and ground reaction. So locomotion and farmer carries are awesome, okay? Upper body push. I love to program different push-up variations. And at times we tend to kind of stray away from them because they, it can be really challenging getting to get down on the floor and adjust like that. But there's a lot of ways you can do them elevated. So hands on a couch or a chair, as long as it's safely kind of pushed against something. It doesn't have to be on the floor. It certainly could, but I love to do full chain hands elevated push-ups. So what I mean by that, okay, I'm going to give you a little example right here. Is that I would keep my body at a 45-degree angle and I would do my push-up, okay? I find that much more valuable than doing modified push-ups from the knees, if that makes sense, because I'm still using my whole kinetic chain. I'm just adjusting the angle at which I'm doing it. And to make it more difficult, eventually you just decrease the angle, okay? Not to say that modified push-ups are bad, they're not. They're a great exercise. But I think that anytime we can get the whole kinetic chain involved, the better, okay? And then lastly, lower body pulls. So tonight I'm gonna teach you something called the Romanian deadlift. You have to love the Eastern Bloc, okay? They gave us a lot of good things, those Europeans, okay? So a Romanian deadlift is that I start with the weight at my hips, okay? I keep my knees soft, and instead of squatting down, see how the bar catches on top of my knees? That's a squat, okay? What I wanna see is my hips rotate high and back, and the bar slides down to just below my knees, and then I drive the ground away, okay? So you'll feel that in your hamstrings rather than in your quadriceps, okay? So you'll get the backside going. That's what we'll want, okay? Now, again, folks, I just kind of talked through a lot of these, but I'll show you each of these. This little program right here would be a great place to start for anybody doing anything at home. This little template's fun to plug and play with, so you certainly could feel free to do that. But each of these things are picked kind of specifically for this group and things that we could work through, okay? Now the warm-up drills, I'm kind of, I just tried to point at my screen like you guys, you can see it's hilarious how we still do things that we used to do. But right here, these warm-up drills, okay, that's where I'm at right here, all right? We're going to talk through those and then I'll go down. But the equipment you would need to do this, and you are certainly welcome to follow along for the next 5 minutes or so while we do this. We're not going to do the whole thing. We're just going to show you a couple of drill or a couple of repetitions of each drill, excuse me, okay? But a laundry detergent or a water jug or milk jug, okay, would be great. You can fill it with sand or fluid and just keep it as a weight. Okay. It weighs about 8 pounds when it's full. Okay. And you could get 2 of them going, be whatever to your heart's desire. Okay. A broomstick. I always unscrew mine from our broom at home. My husband, it's like, where's the broom now? I'm like, I don't know. So I got my broomstick though. I'm all set. Okay. Or the dowel at Home Depot. It's like $2. So I have about 50 of them here in the weight room because we use them all the time with the athletes, all this beautiful weight room. And I love my $2 dowel from Home Depot. Okay. And then of course your own body weight. So I'll show you each of these drills. Okay. You can take notes if you'd like, or you certainly could follow along. The first one is called a 2-foot pogo bounce. Okay. So you would do 3 sets of 10 seconds, but your feet are going to be about hip width apart. Okay. Hands on our hips. And then you don't have to leave the ground. So if it's a challenge for your knees or hips, you could certainly just bounce on your toes. But if you can, then I would want you to pogo up and down like a pogo stick. Okay. So soft bend in the knees, soft bend in the ankles, but that's going to prepare our ankle complex, our knees and hips to do some good things. And it's going to get our heart rate up, which is great. Okay. So we're going to get 3 10-second rounds of that with a 10-second rest in between. Okay. Then our heart rate's going to be up, our temperature is going to be up, and we're going to be ready to kind of start moving. Okay. The next one's a tempo quarter squat. So that means I don't need you to go to full depth. Okay. Most of our athletic positions happen in a quarter squat anyway. So we're learning over time to just train in that range of motion. Okay. So we're going to do it with that tempo that I taught you though, with the eccentric, concentric, and isometric. So what you're going to do, feet shoulder width apart, is sink down 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm in that quarter squat versus a full squat. Okay. So right here, then I'm going to hold for 2, 1, 2, and then drive up tall. So 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, and drive up. Okay. But now I'm working on all kinds of actions with those muscles to kind of get those joints ready and lubed up to go. Okay. And protected. The third one is marching with arm drive and knee action. Now this is a lot very much similar to that assessment that I had us do in the very beginning or talked about, the standing single leg stability. Okay. But more or less what you're going to want to do is stand nice and tall. Okay. And then opposite arm and leg march together. So can't see my arms here. I'm trying here, folks, but we're going to start nice and tall and we're going back and forth just like that. Okay. We're pausing for a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 each time. Okay. So that helps us with that reciprocal motion, some of that locomotion as well, and that single leg stance stability. Okay. And then if you did have a dowel lat stretch. Our lats are the big muscles on our upper back. And boy, do they get tight and cranky and cause a lot of problems, but they're also very important for our athletic performance in general. So if you have a dowel or a broomstick, what you can do is put it out here like this. Put your hand kind of close to the top, not near the middle per se, but near the top. And then you're going to send those hips high and back, which is that RDL or Romanian deadlift position. And you're going to get a nice long stretch through this lat back through here. And it should feel really nice. So you're actively pushing down with that hand and getting that nice long stretch from our hip to our wrist. Okay. So you would be doing that for about 30 seconds or so on each side, but also to what's comfortable. So if any sort of rep range felt uncomfortable or long, by all means, you could adjust. Okay. I love, again, movement quality over quantity always. Okay. So that's the warm up that I would give you. And then this is your little program here. Okay. So again, I kind of went through some of these earlier, so I'll touch on them again. But the goblet squat, I'll show you in full range of motion. That's our lower body push. So we're working on our quadriceps. Okay. I would have my goblet, excuse me, folks, I'm trying to get the right angle here. Okay. I would have my goblet on my chest. I sink down and then I explode up. Okay. Pushing the ground away. Now, if you have a chair, it's a good idea to sit to a chair and then drive up out of it. Okay. I love having a target for our hips to touch. It keeps us honest. And it also gives us great feedback. So that's a good option there for you. But you would do 6 to 8 of those. And then you would do a single arm bent over row. So if you have your milk jug, okay, or your laundry detergent, I have this kettlebell, so I'm going to use that again. Okay. But I would be in a bent over position. Okay. My hips are high and back like that lat position I did in your warm up. I pull my elbow high to the sky and then back down just like that. But now what I'm trying to do, it's really important. I'm going to change my angle here a little bit. I'm not going to rotate my core. So you see how I rotated there? That's not what I want. I want to keep everything steady and stable while I do that row. sending the elbow towards my pocket, okay? So I would do 6 to 8 repetitions on each side there, all right? The Romanian deadlift, we are gonna use the dowel for, okay? Once you got good at this with a dowel and you felt like you had the form and technique down, most certainly you could add dumbbells to your hands or 2 milk jugs. Okay, that would work great as well, or 2 laundry detergents, okay? Just try to make sure they're the same weight for now. But you could also do different weights in each hand someday to make it a little more challenging, okay? But what you're gonna do is take that dowel, okay? You're gonna start at your hips and your feet are gonna be shoulder width apart. You're gonna hinge your hips back and slide the dowel down to just below your knees. My shoulders right here are in line with my toes, okay? So I'm just below my knees and I'm gonna push the ground away and stand up tall. So instead of doing this, yet again, that's a squat, I'm setting my hips high and back, just below my knees, and then driving back up tall. And if there was paint on this dowel, you would see the paint streak on my legs, okay? So I would go up and back down, keeping the weight very close to me. You know, if you think about rearranging your house, carrying a TV or a box out here, that's challenging, right? But if I keep it close to my center of gravity, much easier and much safer for my spine. So you always want to keep it close to your center of gravity, okay? The elevated push-up I showed you with my hands on the box, right? Sending my elbows high and back. So I'm going to show you from behind. I want to make sure those elbows come back that direction. I don't want them way out here, okay? Elbows back towards my pockets at all times. And that's just kinematically friendly on your shoulders, okay? And then the anti-rotation, those dead bugs that I showed you, okay? That's a great one right there. And then that anti-flexion extension laterally, that single arm farmer carry that I showed you, where you're just walking with that kettlebell or dumbbell, okay? But I am gonna show you what I don't wanna see with that one, okay? As I walk away here, hopefully you'll be able to see, okay? Yeah, that's a good angle. So as I walk, okay, what I don't wanna see is this or this, okay? I wanna keep myself level, steady, and stable without doing this or this, okay? And then the challenge is where we're gonna finish tonight, okay? I always like to include some sort of team challenge for us, all right? We're gonna talk about nutrition with that. You know, I'm sure many of you are great cooks. I am trying. My husband's a chef, otherwise I'd starve to death, or I'd eat frozen pizza and mac and cheese. I'm not a great cook, but I'm working on it. But we're gonna talk about how to make performance plates for all 3 meals, okay? So, and we'll talk about what a performance plate is. So this graphic right here I made up for my athletes, okay? And you are, like I said, now my athletes. You wanna take your plate for a low intensity day. So remember I talked about matching your energy expenditure and your intake, okay? So low intensity day is a day where maybe you don't exercise. You're not doing anything. You're just doing your errands, working, going about your day, okay? But you're not exercising per se. You would wanna make sure that half of your plate are fruits and vegetables, okay? Whatever meal it is, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. That a quarter of your plate were some sort of whole grain or really good carbohydrate, okay, good source of carbohydrate. Sweet potatoes are one example of that. And then a quarter of your plate, or about the size of a deck of cards, is lean protein, okay? But that will ensure that you're gonna kind of keep energy balance equal. So you're getting lots of vitamins and minerals from those, you know, those fruits and vegetables, as well as hydration. And then you're getting a little bit of carbohydrate to fuel your day, because carbs are not the enemy, you need them. Okay, you have to have them as an athlete, you have to, okay? Just the right kind, that's critical. And then you need that protein to continue to build your muscles, and your body's constantly rebuilding and remodeling. So even if you're not exercising, you still need that protein, okay? And then we're gonna have water. We're gonna make sure we have our water. About half your body weight in ounces a day is what to aim for every day, okay? And then I feel like me, I love coffee, I have a problem. But you know, if you gotta have your coffee in the day, that's certainly fine too. I'm trying to limit my cream and sugar, but I'm not good at it. So I don't know about any of you. So that's a low intensity day, okay? A non-exercise day. A moderate intensity day would be a day where, okay, you know, I'm gonna exercise today. So I'm gonna have, maybe I'm going for a run or a bike, or I'm gonna lift, okay? Those are great examples. Even like a practice day, if you're going to practice basketball or whatever, you wanna have a few more carbohydrates. So you're gonna increase that percentage of carbohydrate on your plate, Okay. Again, whole wheat versions or whole options, awesome. Okay. And then you're going to decrease your fruits and veggies a little bit. They can be a little harder on your gut on days that you're being extra active, but you still need them for all those nutrients and all that good stuff, the water content of it, fiber for sure. Okay. And then making sure the lean protein, that doesn't change. That's still about a quarter of your plate because you're going to need that to recover from everything that you did to your muscles. Okay. We get little micro tears in our muscles every time we exercise, which sounds terrible, but it's good because they grow back stronger. Okay. As long as we fuel it. If we don't fuel it though, it's all for naught. Okay. And then a high intensity day, this would be like, okay, we have a game today, right? Which hopefully someday in the near future, that would be so wonderful, but it's a competitive type day or a very intensive day. So let's say that you have practice and you chose to strength train that day, or you went for a very long bike ride or a long swim. Just if you're doing something with really high energy level expenditures, okay, then half of your plate would be whole grain. And then a quarter of your plate would be fruits and vegetables, and a quarter of your plate would be protein. So we just want to shift through our intensities and match our intake to our intensities. We still get to eat lots of food no matter what. We just have to adjust what types of food are going on the plate. So for all 3 meals, you would want your plates to match these little schematics. I hope that makes good sense to y'all. So these are those resources that I spoke to you about. Okay, the Instagram, if you're on Instagram, it's nourish_strength. And you can certainly follow us. I'll follow you right back if you'd like me to. And you can look back through all my posts and see I've written, probably close to 100 of those little programs that you just saw for my student athletes that involve everyday objects, buckets, tires, shovels. I've been there and done it all with them to keep them engaged and entertained and improving. So you're welcome to that resource. I also have a YouTube channel and it's just Nourish Strength and Conditioning. You can subscribe to it. You're welcome. I don't put any privacy protections on it. I want it to be a resource for everyone. But it has all kinds of different videos of myself, my assistant coaches, and my interns doing exercises that are instructional in nature for you to follow along with, including the at-home workouts. So we have breakdowns of buckets, the dowels, everything I just mentioned to you, okay? But you could certainly log right on and check out videos of everything most of the things I talked to you tonight and lots more. You're welcome to the resource, okay? So at the end of the night, I hope you can make your home your gym, right? Make it your playground. Right now, and every day, honestly, it's a great resource to have at home if you can't make it to the gym in the near future, if things change. But in the near future, we know it might not. So it's great to have those resources available to you. All right. So if you have questions, I'd love to take some. I see some in the chat here. Deb, do you want to maybe read them and I can answer them, or I can?
Yeah, well, the 2 that are in there, thank you so much. That was awesome. I agree. That was a great presentation. Are the first 2 things in there.
Okay, great.
It was awesome. Your energy is just awesome. Fabulous. Yeah. Anyone have any questions or questions for her? Don't be bashful.
I love to interact, so I'm going to stop sharing at this point, but we'll pull it this.
Lindy,
It says, thank you, Lyndie. Great job. If you need a guinea pig for a program, I am in. That comes from Cynthia. Cynthia.
also, I want to show you something cool, Lindy. I want to show everybody. I went online and got this. It's half my weight. I love it. Look at this. It comes in and it's a motivational water bottle.
It tells you as you go?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it tells me, and then in the morning at 7 a.m. it says good morning. Then at 9, I know I have to get down to the 9 a.m. It says you've got it. Then it says remember your goal. That's it. At 3 p.m. keep drinking. 5 p.m. no excuses. 7 p.m. a little bit more. And 9 p.m. well done.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's fun. And those are great too.
I'm still on 7 p.m., but I'm getting there.
You're way ahead of me. I'm super dehydrated today.
But I don't like water. So what I have to do is I get my Mio drops, the little drops. I put it in water and it tastes like I'm having grape juice or fruit punch, and I drink it all day long. So if anybody go on Amazon, they have 73 ounces or 1 gallon.
Sweet. That's neat. Thanks for sharing that, Cynthia.
That's awesome. Oh, that's too funny. Anybody else? I would, we'll make this recording available so you can get Lindy's contact information. And I would recommend, if you're looking for some ideas, to follow her on either Instagram or YouTube, because it's all there for every one of us, no matter how we compete, what we compete in. If we don't compete, it's all there if you want some help with fitness and nutrition.
Absolutely. It's all there for whatever. And again, my email, if anybody's taking notes, it's LLIBBY2. So LLibby2@une.edu. So I still have my student email. You gotta love it. They've never let me switch to my.
Hey, girl, I just friended you on Facebook, so you
Oh,
better.
fun. Good. And I do post a lot there too. I mean, my family knows that too, but I often will share back and forth between what I'm doing here in Northeastern Nation and at home and all that good stuff.
I already checked out your profile, and now I'm your friend. Lucky you.
I'm
Way to
excited.
go, Cynthia.
I made a friend.
Okay. Anything else for Lindy?
No. That's
Okay. Thank you all for joining us. Be on the lookout. We're going to try to do these every 4 to 6 weeks, some type of a wellness event for you to take advantage of. Brought to you by the Maine Senior Games.
Woo.
So Lindy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lindsay. Great
Have
job.
a good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Appreciated it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.